All right, so Speaker, you have a diagnosis that you wanted to share with the world. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been through the last couple of weeks or months?
Years. I was diagnosed in October of 2018 with prostate cancer, and at the time it was low grade, and there are different approaches, and the approach was really active surveillance and watching it. But you can imagine, the word cancer in and of itself will get your attention. I have a history in my family. And I think being African American at a greater risk, it was something that I took seriously. So I've been going back and forth to UCLA since then for periodic testing and surveillance. And in recent months, numbers just got significantly worse, and they felt like it was time to get the tumor removed. The UCLA has been great. They have some modern techniques that I think allow it to really focus. But, I saw it as an opportunity to really, once I learned how treatable prostate cancer is in particular, that this was an opportunity to educate men about, how treatable this is if you pay attention and monitor your own health. So I recognized after doing a little research that September was already recognized federally as Ovarian and Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And I just thought, I need to be an example and tell folks that, this is something that is treatable if you're paying attention and monitoring it and following directives. And in particular, not just men, but African American men in particular who are less prone to following advice and following up in that regard, that this was, time for me to use this as a opportunity to educate the public.
And was this found in a routine screening? Had you been more proactive because of your family history?
No, I was actually probably just as stereotypical in that regard as a lot of men. But I have a local doctor in Las Vegas that's very attentive, and she saw it as a priority, and so we started some testing, and it was just caught in blood tests that there was something further to look at, and she ultimately sent me to UCLA. And honestly, look, I was just as dismissive, I think, as a lot of men initially, and that's kind of how I ended up at UCLA. Initially, it was active surveillance. Numbers are not great for my age, and there is I shouldn't sugarcoat it. There's after you take a blood test and measure your PSA, if that number is high, then they want to do biopsies. I would be lying if I said that was pleasant, and that's probably why a lot of men don't do it. But I'd had a biopsy done, and the numbers were concerning enough that they wanted to do a follow-up, and I was not very assertive and, quite frankly, excited at the notion of doing that again. But again, my doctor was pretty attentive and had me call UCLA, and after some conversations, they decided, even though I was much younger at the time, at 48, I was much younger than they would normally even want to treat. But I'm glad that I did because, again, just a few months ago, the numbers jumped significantly. So it was, it was obviously a great thing that my doctor was so assertive about having me check it out.
And how old are you now? And typically this is older men.
Right. I am 50. I turned 51 actually this week. So it was, initially, I'd say 2 years ago, my numbers were a little bit high for my age. If I were a few years older, they probably wouldn't have blinked. But, the numbers as they are now are well worthwhile of doing something about it. So, yeah, at 50, I believe is frequently the age that men are recommended to start taking a look at their PSA. I actually, started doing a bunch of, annual and every decade tests at age 40, but at around age 50 is when, in particular, prostate cancer is something that, they recommend that men start really paying attention to.
Without violating HIPAA, can you tell us a little bit about the procedure you're going to be undergoing on Wednesday?
Sure. UCLA has several different approaches to treating localized prostate cancer, and this is cryotherapy, essentially freezing the tumor out. So it's outpatient, has a great success rate based on their studies, and based on the criteria, the fact that it had not spread, that it was really localized, my age, the risks associated with radiation and chemo and complete removal were greater at my age than I think would be ideal. And so, the doctor at UCLA was very thorough, and we've been in pretty steady communication about the recommendation, and I'm pretty confident.
And at this point, you haven't gone down the chemo or radiation route.
Right. I have not gone down, either of those routes. Sometimes it's recommended that folks try that first, but again, it's complicated at the age, just 50 years old. That's, the side effects can be pretty severe. And I was convinced that, having it removed was probably, the best path to go.
I'm sure you've learned so much more about prostate cancer having gone through this. Recommendations for other men, especially since you're, folks that are younger and may not even be thinking about it.
Well, look, I think first is the blood test. I just think I would recommend that folks follow their doctor's advice. When you take a blood test and you have a PSA measure that gives them concern, follow up with a prostate exam, follow up with whatever the doctors recommend. For me at 50, I got a 6 and 8 year old, and at the end of the day, I want to be around. And so I was like, the rest of it doesn't matter that much. I do have a neighbor whose father I've known for a long time, who just recently announced that he, after having radiation therapy, is cancer-free. So it's been something that, I've been talking to with folks close to me. Of course, here in Nevada, down in Las Vegas, Leon Spinks just recently passed away, essentially from complications of prostate cancer, and no one should die from prostate cancer. It's just too treatable.
What's it been like for your family? Especially going back to 2018 when you first found out about this, to hear about that diagnosis.
It's, again, cancer runs in my family. My mother's a cancer survivor. My father passed away from cancer. It wasn't prostate cancer, but they were relieved that I cared and I was being attentive. And I think that at the end of the day is what matters. My brother now is more prone to pay attention. My best friend, childhood best friend, is more prone to pay attention to these things. And I think for something that is so treatable, it just doesn't make sense to let it get out of hand and not monitor it. There are many men that die, and after living a full life, they die having prostate cancer and not having ever known it. And so if you're monitoring it and you're one of those that has it but it's not growing, then they'll just monitor it. But if it is growing, you won't know unless you are on top of it. And I think it's really, really important that folks, remember whatever the discomfort or inconvenience of those tests, it's not worth letting it spread. And for them, they were relieved that I wanted to take care of it. And I think that's really the message for a lot of folks is, look, you got loved ones. My neighbor's dad initially declined to do any treatment, and he's older than me. And his family finally convinced him to do it. And here we are, probably a year or so later, and he was given 18 months to live, and he's cancer-free today. So it's just entirely treatable, and it just makes no sense to not really monitor it and be on top of it.
Sounds like you're not too nervous heading into the procedure, but any nerves about that? And
I'm not nervous about the procedure. I tell my family, if I'm anxious about anything, it's 6 months later, making sure that nothing is left, and they got it all. That will be, if there's a sense of anxiety, that would be it. Of course, again, at the beginning, it was jarring. It really got my attention, and you got to do some reflecting, at some point. But I have a great doctor here in Nevada, and the folks over at UCLA have been outstanding, and so I feel like I'm in good hands. And obviously, I've done a lot of research since over the past couple of years to make sure that I understand the decisions that I have to make. But again, I am interested in being around for my kiddos, and so I think that's if there's no other message, it's that it's so treatable that it's just not worth ignoring it.
I suppose it puts things in perspective too when everyone's asking about the bill deadline and how late we're going to be here tonight, and then.
Yeah, it does. I think having been here for 10 years, things that, relatively newer folks think is an emergency. I was like, yeah, no, it was an emergency last session too. We do the best that we can. The shutdown has really allowed me more time to focus. And obviously spending more time with family and with my kids. But it's the word itself, I would rather it be a lowercase cancer than an uppercase cancer. So it's early, and with most men, if you're monitoring it, it's not typically an aggressive form of cancer. So it's able to be monitored or treated if it gets to that point. But obviously detection is key, and monitoring it in that regard is just it's so easy that it's just it's not worth delaying it, because if it did spread, then it's going to spread to other parts of your body that are going to be much less able to be managed.
Mm-hmm. And we were talking about this before we started recording, but do you plan to stay involved in committee hearings and the legislative process?
Oh, absolutely. This is outpatient procedure. I plan on participating in committee the next day.
I don't know if we talked. I'm just looking at this beautiful family, all these great pictures of here. Your kids are 6 and 8, you said. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do they know what's going on? No,
they don't. I mean, they know that I am going, to the doctor, and that mommy is going to be coming with me. So they know that much. But I think it's a lot for an adult to absorb, let alone a 6 and 8-year-old to really understand it. Like I said, the procedure itself is outpatient. Having played football, I've had many a surgery, and so I just I'm prayerful that they're successful in getting it all. That's really it. And my understanding from UCLA and their procedure is that it's about an 80% success rate in the first time, and another 10% they might just have a little bit left that they have to go back and get out. So ultimately a 90% success rate over an 18-month period. I feel really good about that.
You talked about going to UCLA. Does Nevada not quite have the cutting edge stuff, that maybe we hope someday we would have?
Well, I don't really want to paint a picture that was why my doctor was trying to get my attention, and I think that was really largely it. It was the diagnosis occurred in Nevada, in Las Vegas, and I think again that my doctor was really wanting me to take it serious and get my attention, and that's how I ended up there. It's a study, a research institution. I don't think that the procedures that they do there exist very many places in the world. So I wouldn't compare Nevada to UCLA in that regard. For me, in this, I think, experience, it was really more my doctor wanting, me to take it serious. As a matter of fact, the doctor at UCLA initially said I was too young. And that, he actually literally said I'm pediatric in his line of work. My doctor in Las Vegas asked me to call her back the next day, and within a week, UCLA said, "Yep, come on in." So I think it was really, for me, a function of having it delivered in a way that really got my attention.
And you have a bill draft request, or no, actually the bill dropped. It's both for prostate and ovarian cancer. Right. Any reason why it is going to be for both? Well,
look, first of all, there are many, many forms of cancer that I think are worthy. I mean, we talk about breast cancer on a regular basis here because it was already acknowledged as Ovarian and Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. I just thought it was just an opportunity to educate the public about it. Obviously, there are different types of cancers. I think ovarian cancer doesn't really have screening. It's not similar in a way that prostate cancer is, but because it was already recognized federally, any opportunity to educate the public on things that are treatable if paying attention, I think is just a worthwhile effort.
And how's your caucus taking the news?
They're protective of me. I think, they care for, we're family. They care about me. They're worried about me, praying for me. I promised them as soon as I was lucid, I would send them a text. I appreciate that very much, but many of them have had relatives that have gone through the same thing. And I think, or they've had folks that have ignored it. And so they embraced the notion of me using it as an opportunity to educate folks. They didn't push that. Obviously, this is an incredibly private thing. I think while running for public office subjects you to, quite a bit more exposure, this is not one of those. I didn't have to share this. This was private. Naturally, me being gone occasionally would have brought some attention, but I just felt compelled to make sure that if there's one person, especially after Leon Spinks passed away, if there's one person that will go get tested when they turn 50, or one person that'll follow up after they get a PSA that's higher than it should be for the age, then it's well worth it. Just one.
You're a person of faith. You got a lot of people praying for you this week. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, Pastor Fowler was my longtime pastor. He knew before he passed away. But my church family and my close friends, they're all praying for me.
Anything else you can say about kind of what you've learned from this experience, or maybe how your life and perspective have sort of changed?
Well, it's always tough when you're having to make a decision about. I think for men, it's frequently quality of life. And, for a lot of men, some of the side effects make it to them, not worthwhile. And it's so incredibly short-sighted. I mean, my dad was given 6 months or so to live. He lived 8 years. And so if you're paying attention and being attentive to your own health, you're thinking about your own family and loved ones. And again, I got little kiddos that I still have a lot of work to do to make sure that they're productive citizens. It's sobering. But no, it certainly puts everything into perspective. Look, I think that I have grown into this role by watching some of my members running around like their hair is on fire, and if I'm doing the same thing, then there's no sense of calm. There's no ability to reel that back in. So when it comes to something as serious as cancer, I absolutely think that I need to be a leader and be an example. And I'm comfortable in that role. I always joke, God gave me these broad shoulders for a reason. But it's just important. It's just too incredibly important. And for me, one of those things that's preventable. We're not just talking about, smoking or, we're talking about something that if you catch it early is entirely treatable. And it just makes no sense that so many let it go so far without treating it. And so I'm here to hopefully be, I think, a spark to get people's attention and make sure that they don't put themselves at an unnecessary increased risk because of something that's entirely treatable. And again, the impact that it has on communities of color in particular, we're seeing that disparity in healthcare and quality of health exacerbated by COVID. And so more folks are I think likely to get COVID or to have complications from COVID because of, I think, genetics and trends within different communities of color. And I just think it's something, timely to show folks that, we've exposed these vulnerabilities and we need to take it seriously.
And any message for the men out there that don't get their regular checkup or don't ever want to go to the doctor?
Again, there are worse things. I've had several knee surgeries and shoulder surgeries, and different procedures, and it's a small, window of inconvenience for something that's just incredibly important. And look, the first, for men in particular, prostate exam is not a fun and pleasant thing. And then I remember that my wife had 2 children, and I get over it. And so I think, it's easy, and it's not the same comparison, but when, women have to go to the doctor annually for things that we could not even imagine. So I just think we need to get over it. There's, if there was ever a modified or modern expression or definition of man up, this is it. Man up.
I don't have any more questions. Just want to say thank you for talking to us.
Yeah.
And about half of our audience is over 64, so I think the message will resonate with quite a few of our readers. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Great. Well, no, thank you guys. I appreciate you guys being sensitive.